Hello, it's Sarah from Crafty Creatures here with your Poinsetta painting. We're going to need our canvas panel, our pencil and eraser, some paintbrushes, our paints, and something to wash our brushes in. Now let's get started. We're going to have our canvas facing landscape. That means it looks like a nice wide rectangle. We're going to start by making a nice little circle in the middle and about 5 or 6 little petals going around it. Make sure they have a little bit of a point at the end. Then we're going to add 5 or 6 bigger petals, kind of going around the outside. Make these ones a lot bigger. Make sure they look nice and poinsettia. Make sure they have a nice little curvy point at the end. And draw nice and light, that way you can erase any mistakes. I drew a bit darker so you guys could see it. Then we're going to add a couple extra petal shapes for some leaves. Maybe about 2 or 3 or maybe even 4. You can add a little line down the middle to help you remember which is a leaf and which is a petal. Or you can just leave them plain. Then once you're done, you're going to erase any overlapping lines. That way your drawing looks nice and clean and ready to paint. Alright. Now we're going to take a little bit of white and add it to some red to make a slightly lighter red, just a little bit. And we're going to paint in all 5 or 6 of our little petals. Don't worry too much if you go over the lines, especially at the middle, because we're going to paint that in with a dark color later. We just want to fill in all of our little petals nice and good. Once you're done, you're going to wash that paintbrush, and now we're going to make a darker red. The best way to make darker red is to add in a little bit of purple, brown, or blue, but just a little bit. This will help make it a little bit darker, but without making it go kind of gray like it would if we added in black. So I used a little bit of brown and blue in this one, but you can use just blue or just brown or even purple. Then we're going to fill in all of our big petals. Now I like to mix my colors with my small brush just because it gives me a little bit more control. And then I usually like to switch to a bigger brush, especially for some of these big areas. And again, don't worry too much about going over the lines on the outside because we are going to fill in the background with black. But we should be nice and careful around our smaller petals and our leaves. We're also going to smooth out our paint as we go so we don't have any big globs of paint. That won't dry as well and it won't be as clean. Next we're going to paint in our leaves with green. Now I added a bit of white and a little bit of brown to my green. That way it was a little bit lighter. And by adding in the little bit of brown, it helps make my green a little bit more dull and a little bit more natural. And now I'm going to paint in my leaves, and again, I don't have to be too concerned about going over the lines along the outside, but I do need to be careful around my petals. I'm also going to smooth out my paint so that it's less globby. Now I'm going to start with the background, and I'm going to fill in all of the background with black. Now I have to be very careful along my edges. You can go straight with this larger brush, or you can outline your petals with a small brush and then fill it in section by section. Make sure you're being very careful to not lay your hand on your paint because we definitely don't want to smudge it. And remember to smooth out any big globs so that our paint goes farther and so that it's smoother in the end. We're also going to fill in that little middle of our poinsettia because it is black. We're going to give it a nice little curve around each of our petals, so a nice pointed, almost like a star shape. And again, let's make sure we don't have any big globs in there. Now for our detail lines. We're going to make a red that's a little bit darker than our big petals, and we're going to use this color on our small petals. Again, you can make a darker red by adding in a bit of brown or a bit of blue or purple. This just helps to make it a little bit darker. We're going to add in some nice thin lines onto our small petals. We're going to make a line down the middle and then a couple of little lines on either side, like the veins of a leaf. Now for the big petals, we're going to use an even darker shade, and we're going to do a little bit of blending. So we're going to start with making a nice thick line, and we're going to use a clean but kind of wet paintbrush, and we're going to blend that out onto the rest of the petal. So I'm kind of adding an outline around my smaller petals. This is where they overlap the big one, and there'd be a little bit of shadow. Then I'm going to blend it out onto the rest of my red. And I'm going to do this to each petal, and it's going to help add a little bit of shadow, and it's going to help us see the layers. Once I've done that, I'm going to make this red a little bit darker, and I'm going to add the details again. So I'm going to make a nice thin line down the middle with some little lines coming off of it. To make them nice and small, you're not going to press down very hard with your small paintbrush, and that's going to keep those lines nice and thin. And we're going to do this to each of our big petals. Now to give our leaves some attention, we're going to make a lighter green, so some white and a little bit of green. I had to make mine a little bit lighter. And we're going to kind of do the reverse, where we're going to add in the highlighted areas in nice big blocks, and this is going to help create kind of a nice leaf texture. So instead of doing the lines, we're kind of doing the reverse. So we'll still get that nice veined leaf look, but it's going to look a little different from the petals. It's just going to help make them look different from each other and a little bit more cool. I'm going to do this to all the leaves, and if you want, you can make a darker green to add in some lines too. I just like doing the highlights like this. Lastly, we're going to make some gold dots in the center, right where that black is, and we can use our small paintbrush and the wrong end, and that's going to make those nice dots for us. And then that's it. Good job, everybody. I'll see you next time with a new painting. Bye-bye.